Morning, everybody. My name is Spike Xavier, and I'll be your instructor for the next 8 sessions as we cover all of the objectives and help prepare you to take the 220-1101 CompTIA A+ exam. We're going to have a little bit of a discussion about what's involved in getting A+ certified. I'm going to share with you a little bit of my personal experience in becoming A+ certified for the third time, and I'll explain that. And then we're just going to go right in and we're going to go through each and every published objective on the exam and hopefully be a part of your experience in preparing for this very, very broad exam. So let's get started. Oh, by the way, today's Tuesday because we had Veterans Day yesterday. Thank you to all our veterans, by the way. And so this week we go Tuesday through Friday. And then next week, we'll do our typical Stormwind Monday through Thursday. And it's 2-hour sessions. We'll take a break about halfway between. So let's get going. We're going to start with what this is. This is related to CompTIA's A+ 220-1101 exam. And when you're trying to figure out and walk the maze, especially if this happens to be any of your first certification, it's really, really helpful to know that there is a very solid and consistent, what I'll call source of the truth when it comes to these exams. CompTIA is an independent organization, meaning CompTIA doesn't work for Google. They don't work for Microsoft. They don't work for Apple. They're an independent industry certification operation. And what they do is they produce a series of certifications that are respected industry-wide. And one of the first major technical certifications, and probably one of their most popular still to this day, is the A+ certification. And the A+ certification requires passing 2 certification exams. I've been in IT for many, many years, and I've had to take and pass many, over 20 certification exams in order to get certified in IT. A lot of those exams, you prepare and you take one exam, and when you successfully pass, you achieve that certification. Some exams require you to pass more than one exam, and that's what the CompTIA A+ exam is, that series of exams, the certification is. And there are some certifications that you have to have a prerequisite certification, and then you take that particular certification exam, and the combination of passing that, and usually there will be 4 or 5 different other prerequisites. It's a bundle, but you can like have the one main one, and I'm thinking in terms of like Microsoft has a Microsoft 365 Administrator Expert. That's called the MS-102. In order to become a Microsoft Certified Administrator Expert, you have to pass the MS-102, and you also have to pass one of the other exams that kind of support technologies that are related to that particular certification, like a Microsoft Teams administrator or a security administrator in Entra ID. There's several of them. You only have to pass one of the prereqs and then pass the MS-102, and then you're granted with the Microsoft Certified Administrator Expert exam, certification. So there's not always a direct one-on-one correlation between an exam and a certification. Sometimes you have to pass multiple exams, what I'm saying, in order to achieve that certification. And this A+ one is one such exam. If this is your very first time that you're going to be attempting to take IT exams and pass them, I would like to suggest that you be patient with yourself, and you're part of getting that first certification, that first hurdle, is you learn the way to study for these exams that works for you. Now, the A+ 220-1101 exam is a doozy, okay? It's a doozy. For me personally, I started taking the A+ exams a very long time ago at this point. I think my first one was around 2006 or 2007. And the very first exam I attempted was the equivalent of the 220-1101. It's iterated a few numbers since then. but it was the hardware exam, and I did not pass that exam twice. Okay, so I came up short twice, and luckily I was taught by friends and other IT people. Just keep trying. Okay, every time I took the exam, I learned through the process of preparing, and finally I went ahead and I took it a third time, and I passed. It felt amazing, right? Because after failing twice and finally passing and putting in all those hours, that it felt great. And I tell you this story because what if I would have just taken the exam and not passed and thought, oh, IT is not for me? I mean, that is definitely like, that's the feeling you get when you don't pass your very first certification exam. You're like, dang, maybe I'm not meant for this. That is 100 billion times percent not the case. It just means that you need to study more on the topics that you're weaker on until you're at such a place that you pass the exams. And you eventually will if you don't give up. So I'm sharing that with you because sometimes you don't know how to react. Sometimes we're under pressure from our employer that you got to get A+ certified. I mean, that's real. That's real, right? But just, we all learn at our own pace. Some of you guys are going to be like, oh, I already, I've got it. I'm going to pass, no problem. And you will, and that's great. I'm actually in the category of being like a slower adult learner. It takes me, I have to go over things several times before they sink in, but luckily I've learned to very much enjoy the learning process, and I hope you do too. So let's talk about the CompTIA website. The CompTIA website, and I'm going to go to my demo machine, is at www.comptia.org. And this is going to be your guidepost throughout your career if you're going to pursue any of the CompTIA certifications. So I'm on the home page here, and at the very top, and they have a nice like effect when I mouse over the certifications link, it gives me all of their certifications. You could see that they have many different certifications. The one I want to call your attention to, or the two, are this one, which is A+, it's now 3. There's another one called IT Fundamentals, which they're migrating to be called Tech Plus. If for any reason you're finding you're taking the 220-1101 and you don't make it, and then you take it again and then you don't make it, and that was me, right? What I would say is, if they have the option to take what is going to be called the Tech Plus, but what's currently called the IT Fundamentals exam, if I had that option way back when, or if anyone is in that spot, I'd say, hey, okay, cool. Before you go take the A+ exam again, why don't you do this? Why don't you start at the IT Fundamentals? Again, they're sort of in the process of migrating that to be called Tech Plus. And here's why. Every single thing that you study to prepare for the IT Fundamentals or the Tech Plus, they're basically was called IT Fundamentals. They're changing it to Tech Plus. Anything that you study on that exam, you are studying for the A+ exams. It's just that sort of combines at a much higher, less detailed level what's on the 220-1102 and the 220-1101. So if you're like, I kind of bit off more than I could chew, if that happens, again, please stay in this class, because this actually will help you prepare for the IT Fundamentals or the Tech Plus exam. But I'm just suggesting that if you go take the exam and you're like, ooh, that was way gnarlier than I thought, it's okay. Maybe start at the one that CompTIA says is the prerequisite sort of for coming into your A+ certification. They didn't used to have that, so I was very, very grateful when I saw that they added that in. That's just huge. So I just wanted to mention that. But we're in the 220-1101, so I'm going to go ahead and click on A+. And this is, if you're going to take the A+, the 220-1101, you want to get an account with CompTIA. Okay, so I'm not going to log in because that will take me to my CompTIA page and I won't be able to show you some of this. It kind of changes your landing page. But if you scroll down a little bit, this is going to be what you want to be right here. This section here, I guess they did an absolute positioning for this bar now. This is the CompTIA A+ certification. This is an overview of the certification. This is the exam details and preparation. And even they have one called CE, which is continuing education. And the continuing education A+ certification is pretty much what you'll get if you do the 220-1101. It requires that within a period of time, you perform a certain number of activities that you record with your CompTIA account that verifies that you're keeping up to speed with changing technology. It's not a severe weight on your back, but it's definitely something to keep in mind. I think is good because when I took my original A+, I actually it was what you call a lifetime certification. I didn't technically have to take it again, but I have taken it twice since then so that I could stay up to speed with the exam. If I'm going to teach people the class, I want to take the exam that you're going to be taking to be able to speak to that exam. But down here, I'm going to click Overview. And this tells you about the overview of this certification. And in exam details, this is the very first thing that you want to do if you haven't done this already. You want to come here and you want to just spend a few moments understanding, okay, what is this A+ certification? Well, A+ certification requires that you pass the 220-1101, also known as the Core 1, and the 220-1102, also known as the Core 2. You have to pass both of those exams. Most people end up starting with the exam that maps to this class, probably because of the numbering, the 01 versus 02, but you don't have to. It literally doesn't matter what order that you pass those exams in. The 220-1101 is way more focused on hardware, and then there's a lot focused on troubleshooting methodologies. And the 220-1102, if you're comparing the two, is much more focused on software and operating systems. It's not entirely 100% directly broken down like that, but that's the general guidance. The exam description, 220-1101 covers mobile devices, networking technology, hardware, virtualization, and cloud computing. And the 220-1102 covers operating systems, security, software, and operational procedures. In this week, we are on this one. So we're not going to be covering topics that are on the 1102. There is a little bit of crossover, but it's just because topically we're talking about IT. Sometimes there will be a little crossover in those topics. Now, this is interesting. Number of questions, maximum of 90 questions per exam. It's entirely possible that I'll take the 220-1101 exam and I'll get 74 questions and you'll take it and get 90 questions. I'm not 100% sure how they decide that. I don't know if it's random. I don't know if it's based on your initial answers. I don't know. But the maximum you'll encounter is 90. Most of the questions will be multiple choice, but when you very first sit down for that exam, you're going to sit down, you're going to start the exam, and they're going to hit you with 5 or 6 scenario-based questions where you may have some drag and drop. You may have to like drag a word over to an icon to identify that you can recognize different things. It may be a troubleshooting type of scenario where you have to decide which hardware would participate in solving that. Those first 5 or 6 questions you're going to have a scenario and then you're going to have some interactive diagram in which to solve it. Those can really stump you. You could be like, man, I'm taking a long time to answer these 5 or 6 questions. And, I only get 90 minutes and I'm pretty far in, like I'm, 30 minutes in for 5 questions. Don't panic. You'll hit the end of those it's five. I don't know how many you're going to get, 5 or 6. Then you get to questions that it might be a question that you've studied and you know the answer. They ask you a question. Oh, that's RJ45. You go to the next question, and it's not going to take near as long. And time management is part of this exam. So don't panic on those first questions. Because I know even when I came back to take this exam to prepare to teach this class at Stormwind, I go, I'm going to go take the exams again. And I did. And I got hit that first 220-1101, this exam. They hit me with that first question. And I'm all, oh, okay, this is quite different from what I remembered, umpteen years ago. And then I took the question and I went to the next question. Oh, another one. Are all 90 questions going to be like this? I'm going to run out of time. And it was like 5 or 6. And then I was into what I would call questions that if you've studied for the exam and you feel confident in the topics, you see the question, like you'll know the answer. You'll be like, oh yeah, that's this. There's some memorization we're going to cover, like the troubleshooting methodologies, how laser printers work. You'll want to get some way of memorizing that. You may never repair a laser printer, but you're going to know for this exam the exact steps that a laser printer goes through as it prepares to print out a page. But that's kind of what the experience is. So I'm going to get back over here to the demo machine. Now, mercifully, I think, on the very first one, and this might be another reason that they do this one first, you need to get a 675 on a scale of 900. And this has been about the same. I'm pretty sure this is exactly the same, these scoring, since I took the exam the very first time. But the very first time I took my A+ 220-1101 exam, I missed it by like, if it is 675, I got like 670. Okay, I was like, oh man. And then, I went back and I made a mistake because what I did is I go, okay, I took the exam. This is my first IT professional exam I took. Took the A+ 220-1101, missed it by like 5 points. Was like, all right. But I kind of felt like the questions I wasn't sure about. And the mistake I made is I went back and hit the books hard for just those questions. Like I'm just going to study the ones I know I didn't get. And I was like pounding. And if they would have given me the exact same exam again, I probably would have got a perfect score. Like I'm all like, yeah, I got this. And I sat down my second time. I don't even think I had one of the same questions. I'm all, oh, they have a bank of questions and they're not going to ask you the same questions both times you take the exam. So that may or may not happen to you. I don't know, but it did happen to me and I missed it the second time. Like I said, didn't give up, but I just want to let you know that it's not like you just like memorize the questions. There's a lot of different questions they're going to throw at you. So you really want to learn the topics, which is what this class is about. They do recommend that you have 9 to 12 months of hands-on experience in the lab or in the field. If you don't, if you're like, man, I'm like brand new, I'm just getting into IT, I don't have that, it's okay. Go through this class, do your best. If you get overwhelmed, try taking the Tech Plus exam, because just studying for that alone will probably take you a couple months. You will be studying for your A+ exams when you're studying for that one. So don't stress out. I just don't want, I want to let everybody know clearly, like in IT, if you stay in IT, if you love IT, you stay in IT, the chances that you won't have a really rewarding, successful career are low. Like I said, I came out, I started my own computer company doing e-commerce. I didn't know what I was doing really. And I figured it out trial by fire. And then eventually I decided to go to a training center, a school, to try and get certified. And I really took up .NET development. Anyways, long story short, I ended up learning, oh, you go take certification exams. And then if you pass them, you earn that certification. And then in the industry, you're considered to be worth a certain, there's like a salary range generally that goes around those certifications. And in addition to that, for jobs, there's like certain certifications are a good fit to be able to be ready to perform in certain jobs. So once I kind of learned, no one kind of told me that, is kind of figured all that out with the help of other IT people and learning. And then I went, oh, okay. So A plus was my first real try, and I failed miserably, but eventually I did get it. So I want to just encourage you, please just stick with it. If you love IT, you'll find your way. Typically they retire 3 years after launch. What that means is they rev the exam. So there's information about what work roles, like the Department of Defense 8140 approved work roles. This is specific to this industry. If you work for a Department of Defense directly or a contractor certified, they generally will be pretty strict. Like, hey, anybody that works on projects of this type or that type have to be A+ certified. So they might say all your tech support specialists, systems administrators, cyber defense, infrastructure support specialists, etc. They all have to be A+ certified or have to achieve it within a period of time in order for contracts to go through and things like that. So that's information about the A+ certification. Now, the first thing I do when I am going to take a CompTIA certification is I sign in here. I fill out this form. I check both these boxes, exam objectives and practice questions. I answer this information. I agree to the terms of service. And then that allows me to download the most important document, which is this one, the exam objectives. You need to get your own. I would put just a link to this. Like, there is a link to this on the Stormwind website, but you really, really, really want to have your own CompTIA account. And you know what? Also, for me on my CompTIA account, when I very first got certified, I used the email address of where I worked. You know, it made sense. And then I went, oh, you know what? I'm not going to do that anymore. And eventually I did this whole profile change, and I use an email address that's my own, that I know I own no matter where I work. If I get laid off or whatever, I just have my own email address that I manage. And that's another tip. I recommend having an email address that you know you are in control of, you own, and it will always be with you. That's just a suggestion as well for these types of things. But getting back over here to this exam objectives, you'll be able to download this. You can download it off the Stormwind website, but I highly recommend that you get your own CompTIA login and download it there. It looks like this. You want to read all of this. If you've never taken a certification exam, you want to read all of this. Okay, this is what I'm going to put under the context of this is required reading to pass this exam. And it's a really, really, really good tool for you. This is my guidepost. So this is the exam objectives. CompTIA is awesome at providing test-taking candidates with specific objectives. And if you go through this document, and we're going to cover every objective in this class for the 220-1101, driven by this piece of paper right here. If you go through this document and you follow their guidance and learn all of the objectives that are printed, you're not going to get any surprises. So I have taken, I promise I don't remember how many exams I've had. I have over 20 IT certifications, just to give you an idea of how many exams that probably is, and not pass them all at all. But I've taken them with other vendors, and every time I've taken a CompTIA exam, the question, I could literally, if I had, they don't give you a copy of the questions, but they did, I could like write the objective number that it tracks to. They don't throw any surprises at you. And I don't remember any trick questions where they're like this. Other vendors, literally, I've been taking an exam, non-CompTIA exams. I'm not going to mention the vendor's name, but I take the exam and I'm all, okay, I know because I've been working with this product that the answer is B, 100%. B all day long, 365 days a year. But I also know that I'm taking their exam and they want me to pick C. So I have to pick C. So these exams aren't like that. This is such a clear guidance, and I highly recommend that you become very familiar with it. So what they do is they say, okay, this exam, the 220 1101 is broken up into 5 domains of knowledge. 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Okay. The high level ones are mobile devices, and mobile devices you're most likely to encounter on your 220-1101 exam. 15% of the questions you're asked are going to be verifying that you have the knowledge that they outline you should have under the domain of knowledge mobile devices. 20% are going to be under the domain of knowledge networking. And when I say the domain of knowledge, you're going to see that they clearly define what that is. If you're going to be a network administrator for a security team, you're going to need to know a lot more than you need to know to be an A+ certified support technician, okay? But in order to get that other knowledge, they're just going to assume that you know everything that's in the CompTIA domain of knowledge for networking. So it really, really, really does make sense. It's an additive experience as you go through your IT certification journey. For hardware, it's 25% of this exam, virtualization and cloud computing 11%, and hardware network and network troubleshooting 29%. So what is the main focus for CompTIA for the 220-1101? Well, we can infer that they want you to know both about the topic of hardware and networking to a certain level, that they're going to tell you exactly what you need to know in those domains, but they also want you to know how to apply that knowledge to troubleshoot things that are going wrong. So a support technician, right? So this is what they're talking about, and that's how this breaks down. And on CompTIA exams, they will all provide you with this information. They will, in my experience of over 20 years of doing this, I've never taken a CompTIA exam where I used their objectives, exam objectives document, which this is, as my guidepost, and felt like I was misled. I never went in, like, let's say if I went in and took this exam, I didn't come away saying, no, I got like 30% mobile device questions. Nope, I don't know, because they don't give you a copy of the questions, but I felt very comfortable, like, yep, those are accurate. Those were very accurate. And I'm sharing that with you so you can have the confidence in this document. Now, if I go down the document, when we talk about, all right, what do I need to know about mobile devices? Well, this is exactly what you need to know about mobile devices. And notice how they preface a lot of their objectives. Given a scenario, install and configure laptop hardware. So they're expecting that you can at least define the steps to replace a battery, to replace keyboards or keys, to replace RAM, to replace hard disks, and know the difference between HDD and SSD and understand the migration of data between them. To be able to replace or identify wireless cards, and then that's under hardware device and replacement. And then for laptops, for mobile devices, physical privacy and security, they want you to understand what biometrics are and what NFD or near field scanner features are. If you know all of those things, if you could basically sit down right now with someone who doesn't know anything about IT and describe in detail all of these topics in the context of CompTIA, I would tell you that you'll probably get all the answers, the questions that map to domain 1.1 correct on this exam. So they're very, very clear. The next one, 1.2, compare and contrast the display components of mobile devices. And we're going to talk about all of this. 1.3, given a scenario, set up and configure accessories and ports. And on it goes for about 19 pages of objectives, and then, sub-objectives, and what they're expecting that you know for this exam. At the very end, and I've edited this, they give you something called an acronym list. I recommend highly that you either create flashcards. We have some flashcard-like stuff up on the Stormwind site to help you. I would recommend writing all of these down, this acronym list, write it down if you're okay with that, 1 to 4 to 5 times. Probably get you several answers correct on this exam by being able to identify an acronym and what it stands for. And that's very helpful. Also, these are important in your IT career to be able to understand when someone says, hey, Spike, we're having trouble with the ARP cache. What's ARP? Oh, Address Resolution Protocol. Oh, and without getting into details, we're going to talk about this. That's at the physical layer, the MAC address layer of communications on a network. So it's that type of thing that you'll be able to do. Even if you don't know right now, you'll be able to, by the end of this class, you'll have a really, really, really good footing in that regard. So for this document, I'm just sharing with you my approach, okay? My approach for preparing for these exams after doing it for a long time is I get the objectives document and I either handwrite or type, and I'm not worried about neatness or anything, penmanship or typos. I look at this document and I type it, but I have handwritten them before. Everything, copying this entire document. And I'm not trying to talk to myself while I'm doing, I'm just copying the entire document and I could immediately delete it if I want to. And then I begin studying. And the reason I do that is because somehow subliminally that goes in my brain what I'm going to encounter in this exam. It's just this weird thing. Right before I'm about to take the exam, I do that again, but this time it takes a long time. Might take me a week because I go through and as I'm copying the document, as I'm going through typing out the document, I'm looking at each of the topics, and this is what I look like, a crazy person, but I'm doing this. I'm all, okay, mobile devices, given a scenario, install and configure laptop hardware and components, hardware device replacement. And I'll be like battery. And I'll be like, okay, so batteries can either have screws, usually they're on the back or underside of a laptop. Sometimes they have a switch. Sometimes they have screws. Typically, there's a little cable that I need to undo when I'm taking the battery out. I need to be aware of the fact that batteries are hazardous material. I need to follow the proper disposal techniques according to the type of battery I'm dealing with and where it is I'm disposing and how I'm supposed to disposing it according to government regulations. I need to be aware if I see any swelling or any growth in the bottom of a laptop, that battery needs to be replaced immediately. Lithium-ion batteries could potentially be a fire hazard. I need to handle with care. And I might say, like, if I see that the laptop's not holding its charge for a period of time, some of the things like that, that's how I do it. That's me talking to myself if I'm driving or whatever, going through that. Keyboard keys. Keyboards are embedded in a laptop, so that type of thing, that's what I do for all 19 pages before I feel 100% ready